All right, now I can talk. It's recording. Just kidding.
Yes, it's
I don't know if
official.
I want to be recorded on this. So, disclaimer, I am not an accountant or nor do I give tax advice or any of that, but I'm going to give you some tax advice. Just kidding. The main thing is, and some of you have been on and heard this before. Some of you actually, I think I can see at least one of you on this call may use the same tax um, firm that I use. I know Andy and Natalie do,
Yep.
but I think Nisha does too. The main thing is to think about if if you're at the diamond level and above, even sometimes a healthy gold will have significant 1099 income, right? Anytime you have 1099 income, you really should look at your different tax strategies that are available to you, especially because at that point, you're kind of self-employed or in that realm, and you really want to look at different ways that you can take advantage of the tax law. And you have to have the mindset of that taxes are there for you to take advantage of as a business owner. So there's a book I recommend that I read years ago, which sent me kind of on my tax journey. So I had about three different tax professionals prior to 2000, I think it's 2012 or so. Um, the first one totally got me audited and skipped town. So that was kind of a fun experience. And that was back when I was like making no money. It was even pre-doTERRA. And then the next two were adequate, meaning these were tax guys that just did the norm, kind of like they just do their thing and kind of what you'd find with any average tax situation, which is if you're a W-2, which employee, that's kind of status quo and okay. But you want to find somebody who is more aggressive and understands the tax code. And I say that again, coming back to the book called Tax-Free Wealth. So if you haven't read that book, there is an Audible version of it. Highly recommend Tax-Free Wealth. And what that book does is help you kind of wrap your mindset around the idea that the tax code can work to your advantage as a person who has, a business, who's self-employed, and especially as we look at the cash flow quadrant and we are moving more into, if you haven't already, into the business owner and then investor stage, which is where you want to get to income wise, and how you want your income, working for you. And so as you're moving over to that side of the quadrant, it really behooves you to understand how taxes can work in your favor. All right, you can take advantage of that. Tax-free wealth will help wrap your mind around that. Highly recommend it. When I read it, what it did was give me a list of things that I wanted to look for in a tax professional. And so I looked at the two that I had and basically in my mind interviewed them because I knew them and knew what they did and had talked with them. And they failed my interview test. So based on the criteria that I wanted after reading that book. So then I reached out to some other individuals, people in doTERRA, even owners to like higher ups. And then I just kind of did some searching as well. And I interviewed probably 5 or 6 different tax professionals and or firms, and um, and was looking for someone that would meet the criteria, pass the test, whatever. And it surprised me actually how many, and some of these were big firms, and like I said, like an owner of doTERRA and other people high up were using, and they failed based on the tax-free wealth paradigm, which is a really good paradigm. And so I continued to interview, and I came across the firm who I use now, and they were already also working with other folks who were highly successful in network marketing, it turned out, which doesn't really matter if it's network marketing or not. I just thought that was a perk that they kind of understood our field. And so anyway, it doesn't matter who you use, right? Whether you use the firm I use or not, just make sure you understand tax-free wealth, make sure you've got a list of criteria you're looking for, and use that criteria to interview different firms and find out who's going to be the best fit for you. And a lot of that will also depend on your income levels and what kind of things you qualify for as far as tax advantages. But there are definite different ways to invest in things and get a tax advantage from that, and or how to use your money in the best way possible to increase your income and to also reduce the percentage of taxes that you pay. Because as you get up into the 1 percentile, right, which doTERRA can do for you and has done for many, your tax bracket, of course, gets up into like the 54 and plus percentile, and nobody wants to pay that much tax to a government that mismanages our money. So, oh, is this being recorded? Just kidding. But so you want to basically get yourself into where you pay your fair amount of taxes, right? Whatever that is for you. And so anyway, there are things like just, if you're buying like I just upgraded, Roxanne tends to hold on to things and use the crap out of them forever, which I love about her. She's super frugal and she loves to reuse things and use them till they just won't work anymore. So she was limping along on a 2017 laptop that was not even functioning properly. So I upgraded her to a more recent laptop. And of course, that is an expense that we can expense for our business and helps us in our tax strategies. If you're you drive around in your vehicle, and some of you guys, this is going to be old news or whatever. I don't know what level of understanding we have here, and I don't know who's going to be listening to this call later, but the vehicle you drive around to do any doTERRA in, right? That could become your business vehicle, right? And there are tax advantages to that, whether you write off mileage or you write off the payment and expense of the car, and the gas that goes into the car, depending on which part of the strategy works for best for your situation. And your tax professional should know and be able to advise you on that. If you have an RV that you use and you drive to different places where your teams are and you do events or you stay in it, when you visit and work with your teams, that can be something that can be an expense. Your home, like for me, like I have, this is my office as well. So like half of like my expenses towards maintaining landscaping, home improvements, additions. I added a pool. I was able to expense about half of that pool because I use it for events for my team and things like that. So there's so many things that you can look at along the way that you purchase that involve your business in some way. Yeah, pool party at the Bibees. Bring it on, Nisha. Let's set one up. And so, there's this whole uh, thing of where you start to think about, okay, all of the things that I'm spending income on, how are those being utilized as far as my business? And you have to remember our business is semi-unique in that it's woven into so many different aspects of our life. So there will be things that if you have a really good tax professional that you can think about and just explore with them and ask questions about, hey, can I expense this because this services my team as well as maybe like my living space, right? I have team over at our house all the time, constantly. Pretty much who comes to our house is either in my team or a prospect, right? And there's different expenses around hosting, visiting, meeting with those prospects and or the team that visits. And so there's many different things that you might expense that you're not thinking about right now that are valid expenses. Or maybe you are only able to expense a portion of it. Like with the guy that does all my landscaping, 1 month it comes out of it's billed personally, and 1 month it's billed out of my business account, right? And you can do that. There's a lot of things you can 50-50 or different kinds of percentages. And if you have a savvy tax professional and the tax professional understands network marketing and how much it is woven into your life, right? Because we don't have our business is not like a traditional brick and mortar where I go there and I spend these hours there. Like we spend hours all day long in our business that it touches our home as an office, our vehicles as an office, we go somewhere to do something. I mean, I've done, camping trips with team and stuff like that, and that can all be expensed. I've gone to family reunions where, everybody at the family reunion is a customer or in my business. And so, and we talk about doTERRA and we update people on doTERRA during those events. So, there's so much that we do that a traditional business wouldn't be thinking about as part of a tax strategy. So again, if you read the book Tax-Free Wealth and you digest that really well, make some notes from it, you can start to figure out the things you should be thinking about as far as tax strategy and your doTERRA business and how much more is available for that tax strategy. And then also making sure that you're interviewing your current tax professional that they meet the standards you're looking for, can answer the questions and understand how to maximize your tax opportunities. And then if you don't have a tax professional, that you find one and you interview and make sure you have the right fit for your situation. So I think I don't know, I'm trying to think of other things there's so many, like every donation you make to anything, right? You want to make sure that's being taken advantage of. I have investment type things where I am investing in like a retirement future, and there's strategies there that also can be used as funds to invest in, like if I buy my next work vehicle, right? I can use some of those funds to purchase that work vehicle, but then also gives me, and I'm not paying a loan to a company, I'm paying it to myself, and then there's some tax advantages just overall with that. So there's so many different things you could talk about, and it will depend on your income level and where you're at. And the main thing is just to remember that you need the right tax professional and you need the right mindset around tax strategy. Any questions or Andy, you think of anything I haven't been talking about?
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to drive home everything that James just said, we actually have a presidential diamond on our team who is using our same tax guy, and they went through a divorce, and she reached out to me and she's like, "Hey, I just have this feeling like I should switch to another firm. Like I feel like I need different help in that area." And I was like, "Well, tell me how much you know about your financial situation." She was like, "Nothing." I was like, tell me what you know about tax strategy in general." She's like, "Nothing." I was like, "The worst thing you can do is to switch to another firm. Like, please, I'm begging you, stay with the firm we have." It makes all the difference. James, I appreciate you referring us to Chris at Solence. We used him for a few years, and then we hired a guy who was a CPA, and he felt like he could do a better job, so we switched to him for a few years. I'll bet that we overpaid by at least $500,000 just over the span of those couple of years. And so we're back. We're back with Chris at Solence, and super, super grateful for that referral.
It's a great contractors?
Yeah, so like we have helpers. So the Goddards have employees because of the level of work that some of those people do for them. We have people who help us in different ways or different capacities that don't really qualify to be an employee because there are pluses and minuses to having someone as an employee or a contractor. The thing as a contractor, like for instance, we have some people who do, maybe regularly every week, but they're not full time with us and we're not providing any benefits or anything for them. But they fill out like a W-9 form that's basically means they're going to be 1099 basically by my firm. My Solons, who I work with, will 1099 them. And we just explain to people when we are looking for helpers, hey, have you ever thought about being a contractor? Because for them, actually, we've found over time that they actually make more money as a contractor because they now are, they are business owners. They're providing a service, not just for us, but for other people in cleaning and or we have people who do childcare on not regularly, but occasionally or whatever, right? All these things. And they're providing that service for other people, or they can, if they opt to, provide it for someone else. And so that now they have a business. And if they're 1099, they now have some tax advantages that if they find a tax professional, what we found is that we just help them, understand that. And then they're cool with it. And then they work as a contractor so that it just, there's less, because they're not
Less
so
taxes.
fully integrated into our business system or whatever. There's just less cost for us if they're a contractor and more benefit to them tax
You're
wise.
not having to pay Social Security tax for
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, so it just
Yep.
keeps things a lot simpler. I love
Yeah,
that.
now we do have a payroll company that we use and they're doing my payroll basically, right? Mine and Roxanne's payroll, so they'll take out X amount of taxes and everything and make sure that all that's being done because I'm technically, I'm on the payroll of my corporation. Now, that's another thing that's really good for you guys to know, and a good tax professional can help you understand which is best for you. Like I'm incorporated as an S corp, right? But you may only need like an LLC. I happen to have, because of the different strategies and the income level that we're at, we have like an S corp, a C corp, and several LLCs, and they all do different things based on, maybe investing. Maybe one's wrapped around investing in real estate, one is wrapped around investing in different kinds of strategies that aren't real estate, and maybe one is where we pay all of our contractors out of. And the cool thing is they all synergize with each other and work with each other to help with taxes. But to start out with, if you start making, $4,000 to $5,000 a month regular residual income out of your doTERRA business, you now really need to not just, a lot of people just keep it in their name. They're just using their name as their business. And at some point it really makes sense, probably about that 4,000 or 5,000 at least. And you can do it sooner, but it makes for sure sense at $4,000 or $5,000 a month to get an LLC or some sort of corporation going, and a good tax professional will help you know which one is best. And as your income grows, you may expand into having more than one of those entities set up for different tax advantages.
That's great to remember. So if you haven't done that yet, you can even do it here before the end of the year.
Yep.
Set up an LLC and get things set. One thing to note on that, James, because those entities can be helpful. They passed a new law, the Corporate Transparency Act. So here in the US, if whatever businesses you own, you need to file a report on that. That's called a beneficial ownership report before 12/31 of this year, or you can get some pretty gnarly fines. So
Yeah, and especially if you're just opening one now, it's just part of the deal. But if you've already got one
yeah,
previous opened, you had a window where you could get compliant, and that's that
Yep.
1231. So if you open one right away, that's going to be just part of the process. And if you have a good tax professional, they can advise you, or I pay my tax professional because I don't want to do it. I pay
Mhm.
them to do it. Super worth it to pay them to do it. And just remember, any tax professional that you utilize, you're going to pay them for services. You're going to pay them to do your taxes, right? And they're going to do personal taxes and corporate taxes for you, okay? If you have an entity, and then any other services outside of that you might pay for that you do, like for instance, with my tax professional, because it makes sense for me. I have a standing every month on the same Wednesday at a specific time. I have a monthly meetup with my tax guy. I pay for that, but all the fees that I pay to my tax guy, I so get back in all of the things that they do for me. It way more than pays for it. But just remember, like, to wrap your mind around, at what point does it make sense for you to do your own stuff and for them to do stuff for you? So you want to get advice from them on the things that you should be doing, and then you can together decide what you're willing to do on your own, because it saves you a few bucks until you're making big bucks, right? And or what things you kind of want them to do because they can do it so much faster, so much more effectively, efficiently. They think in this all the time. And so
Yeah.
that something like what Natalie just mentioned, which is important to know if you set up an entity, is to think about, like, for me, it was way more worth it to pay them to do it. I looked at
Right.
what I had to do and I was like, I'm not doing that, man. I want all the time I can to focus on my business.
Because truly, what can we do? If we can focus on our business, we can multiply what we already have. The asset that you already have in your business can be multiplied so much easier than you trying to save nickels and dimes over here. So super important to see that in perspective. For me, I just set up a Calendly link because there's some other network marketing companies that are not doing that well and want to talk to doTERRA. So, I'm spending my time on that Calendly link and discovery calls instead of doing these forms. Or, I'm going to be the overseer of my finances, but I'm not going to be the bookkeeper. I'm not going to play these other roles. So be clear about that, because I'd rather make more money so I can pay for someone to do those kind of tasks. So
Right. And this firm, that's a good point. This firm also does my bookkeeping. You don't have to. For a while, we had a different firm doing bookkeeping, which honestly, when you look at it, once you start making a certain amount of money, it's so cheap to have someone else do your bookkeeping, because they're doing it for multiple people. They have a system. It doesn't cost a ton. And they just, they just do it. And so then eventually I merged and had this firm, which has been a great advantage for us in the sense that they have access to all the books. They don't have to work with an outside party, and they can constantly, update and see what's going on, so that every time I meet monthly with my guy, that I'm up to date. And the other thing is here we are at the end of the year, right? This is actually not the best time to start. We should probably have these calls like at the beginning of the year, and maybe this will be more something, if you aren't utilizing it, you start in 2025. But because what you really want to do is be thinking right out of the gate and developing the strategies for the coming year that you're going to use, and make sure that every month, even if you don't meet with a guy, that you yourself, if you know what you're working on, are taking a moment to look at, where am I at with my tax strategies? Or if I'm doing my own books, which you can do, there's lots of software and apps out there where you can do your own. And if that works for you, great. And especially if you don't have kids and all that stuff going on, which we still have a ton of, then you might take the time and you might enjoy doing that, whatever. But the point is that books, whether you do them or somebody else does them, that's a very important facet of making sure that you are tracking all of the expenses that you could be taking advantage of.
Yeah, amen. Amen. And, I think this just comes up at this time of year because we're all like, okay, there's some pain, impending pain. Definitely, we want to be paying attention to it earlier. But like just the other day, we were like, oh yeah, we were going to get a car last year, right? But we were still kind of finishing our house, and I was like, if we replace this car already, it'll get used like in finishing up the house stuff, or if we're doing any parts of that, I didn't want to ruin it. So now we're ready to buy. And so one thing to keep in mind is like, oh, hey, if we buy a $60,000 car or an $80,000 car that's over 6,000 pounds, then we can deduct that, and we decide how much of that use we feel like is going to be the business. For us, it's like our life gets really intertwined, and so might be like 80% write-off business use, and I can take that this year if I buy that car and have it delivered to me before then.
Yeah,
So,
and if it's a truck, a full-size truck, it's like 100%. So there's that advantage too.
so like that, I looked it up on ChatGPT because I'm like, okay, what are the differences? I'll look up things there and then talk to our tax professional, so it helps me like get oriented a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good
Welcome.
point. I have a running in my phone. I have a note. It's a running note, questions for tax guy. So
Mm.
that because like stuff will come into your brain, right? And I just am constantly adding to that so that when I do meet up with or if it's
Mhm.
urgent, I can send an email or a text because the office has a texting option and an email, and then each accountant that's available. Chris might be full up as far as getting new clients, but there's several great accountants there that all have been trained by Chris and his mom, and his mom is like she's been doing taxes for 40 years, and like nobody, I've never met anybody who knows stuff like she and Chris. But anyway, so but they all have assistants, and so you email them with any questions you have, and then they will get back to you based on that and keep the communication going.
Yeah, yeah. Love that. Super wise. Can we talk about meals and catering, that kind of thing? Because I was doing some things here, and I wish I would have known better, right? So catering refers to meals provided at an event, meeting, or gathering that's often held in a business setting. So we have a home office, right? So corporate meetings, seminars, office parties, or training events. Like if I'm doing any kind of gathering, any kind of meeting here that has to do with our business, I can have that catered. Business meals at restaurants, those are with people that we're doing business with. Catering can be 100% deducted. Business meals at restaurants, 50% deducted. Okay.
One thing to think about too as we go through all this is that one thing my accountant's always talking to me about is try not to invent things to expense, meaning don't spend $1 to save 10 cents. Like, if it's something that you're already going to do and is part of the process, or if it's something that really does create an immense advantage, right, and saves you a significant amount of money. Those are the kind of the two tests, because sometimes you might think, well, shoot, I'm gonna do this spend on this
Mhm.
because it's going to give me a tax advantage, when it might not be really something you would choose to do as far as your business or anything like that, because you think you're going to save. And the reality is, we're just looking to look at all of our business practices that make sense and that are
Mhm.
necessary, and maximize how we can use that to our advantage from a tax perspective.
I think that's so important because I didn't really understand things. If you understand which tax bracket you're in, you might be in 10 to 35%, right? So if you understand which tax bracket you're in, you can be like, oh, I'm saving this much money to spend this money. But if that's not for something you value and is really helping your business, it's all for naught, right? It's silly. So only be thinking about those things that can really multiply your business. Sometimes at year end, we have purchased a printer because we needed a better printer for our office, or upgraded our laptops to help with work, right? Because we realized if I spend $1,000 on that laptop, that's decreasing my income. So if I'm in the 35% tax category, then I'm getting a $350 discount if I buy it right now. Does that make sense? So it's like I'm still spending $650 to get that laptop, but instead of sending $350 to Uncle Sam and not having a laptop, I'm swapping out that for I get a laptop and I'm sending $650 to Apple.
Right. And that's, so if you're going to get a laptop, right, which I just mentioned about Roxanne, right? She for sure needed one. And mine was too big and heavy. So I opted for a different, more effective one. And so it was a necessity for the business, right? It wasn't like, oh man, I sure like a new laptop. So why don't I just get one, right? Instead of, because I could use those funds maybe for something else in the business that might bring a better tax advantage, or a more, useful. And when we talk about maximizing and being efficient with our funds.
I love it. Yes, it's totally a different fiscal approach in the EU. Thanks, you guys. And hopefully sometimes these ideas just help you think about some different ways of doing things, and whatever applies to you, you take those principles and apply it, right?
Yeah, and the firm I use does know a lot about international tax and can help there. But the point is, if you go get, and I don't know if you were on the call early, Simona, when I was talking early in the beginning, but Tax-Free Wealth is a book. If you look that up on Audible, there's an Audible version of it. You can get the print version of it. It's one of the best tax books out there to really understand how to maximize and utilize tax laws wherever you're at to your advantage. And there are firms that are international. You can find someone local that, in your area, but there's also firms that use the tax-free wealth strategy that are international firms. And there are, if you want, like if you read that book and stuff, they'll have a website and things where you can actually find people who use, they'll have a list of recommendations of firms you can look for who use the tax-free wealth strategy. And that actually, the people who wrote that book have a firm, and you can actually interview them or have, talk to them as well to find, and they're based out of Arizona, but in the end,
It's a
you just,
principle, right? That gets
you just need to
applied
find,
anywhere you are in the world.
yeah, you just need to find those who understand that paradigm of tax-free wealth.
James, like we have these other friends from other network marketing companies, and they subscribe to that tax-free wealth thinking and methodology as well. So wherever they are in the world, and different, because they're creating other income. Let me hit on this one thing that we've learned here on catering, then I'll close this out. But to me, our calendars become a great way of keeping track of things. So when I add something into the calendar, all of our business stuff that, it's either Andy and Natalie or Natalie and Andy individually, right? But those things are all business things and they're marked down for that. And so I'll just write down what it is, who it's with, right? And then if we have Chipotle come in and do catering, or we do like order just for like 10 people or things like that, that's 100% write-off. It allows me to get better on just, okay, I can do these meetings. I can set things up for success. This is easy to do. And I know that this is going to pay off. So, but like we hire somebody that does a lot of catering for us, and she just comes to our home, she buys the food, and then she cooks the food for us for many of these things, and we'll make one catering check for her. And that helps us. And since I have record of all those things in our calendar, then I've got it tracked. So just some things to be aware of. And she is not like, she doesn't have an LLC for a catering company. I'm just paying her individually, but I do have her fill out that, like James said, was that a W-9?
W-9, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and for catering services. But she doesn't have to have like a business account or da-da-da, right? But she's tracking those expenses and giving me one total, and I've got that record of that check going out for that one total with catering.
I wish I had access to good. We used to have that in California. Dang it, a little more challenging here.
We want to hear from you. What else are you doing that's super smart? Throw it in the chat, hype up. What else do you love that's super useful? Mastermind it.
So this keeps coming to my mind, so maybe it's useful. I like to look at my business in a quarterly kind of framework. And so if I have a list of expenses or things that I want, or trips or things like that, I might run a list at the beginning of the year, maybe my expectation or something I want to do for the year. Even if it's something fun I want to do, I kind of have a general idea of what I'd like to have happen. And then what I try to do is see how I can weave business into that so that I can have a partial, or how I can work that, right? So if I'm going to go to Hawaii with the family for something, is there an event I can set up or something I can do to get, then that gives me the write-off on the tickets. It would give me the plane tickets. It would give me a write-off on at least a couple of the hotel stays and things like that. So that's one thing I like to do, is see if it's possible. And then there's times where it's just not the right thing to do, but it's a hack, right? To see if there's a way to put something and weave it together so that you can maximize. But then on a quarterly basis, I like to look at the end of a quarter, look at my balance sheet and my profit and loss statement, kind of snapshot where I'm at. And then I look at some of the expenses you were talking about, cars, laptops, things like that. And then I say to myself, okay, like, is this the right quarter to maybe be doing this? Instead of waiting till the end of the year, mid-year, around June or July is when I really do an assessment of the year and some projections out for the rest of the year. If I'm going to have to make some bigger decisions and say, is this feasible at this point or not? Or based on revenue, is there something I want to be doing? Do I maybe need to think bigger, for tax purposes? And so I start kind of getting that in my mind around June or July. Even if I'm not ready to act on it, I want to start thinking about it if it's going to take a little more effort to make a decision.
Totally.
When I hit fourth quarter, like every October is my end of year, like I, run all of that. And I'm looking at all that snapshotting, and then I'm very strategically looking at October, November, December. So when I hit December, because it's holidays and you want to be present and there's a lot going on, right? Should be wrapping things up because I started in October. And as well as my planning for the next year. And so I really like October to be the beginning of the end. And then at that very last minute, making sure you have room on credit cards or some other really easy places to access cash if you're going to be wanting to do any sort of purchases at that very last week, because I take a final snapshot, usually like right after Christmas on the 26th. And I'm trying to minimize my tax liability, right? I'm like, okay, what can I be purchasing and rolling in here reasonably, to roll it over, to keep it out the next year. But maybe
That's
was
awesome.
I don't know if that made sense, but
Super good insights.
Yeah, one thing too, to think about as well, when you talk about family trips and things like that, there are definitely, for us, like, our kids are employees, right? And there is a certain level of tax benefit that you get per child that is still a dependent, right, in a sense, or maybe not a dependent, but the point is, like, our kids, they put away our inventory, they refill different places around the house that need product. They will video us for us, or they will be in videos, or they will be in pictures we use for promo. They will support events and things that we do. All those things, it's not like they don't do anything. They do stuff. So you definitely want to think about that. The other thing to think about too is, like, we have people on our team that we go and visit them and stay in their homes, and then they come and visit us and stay in our homes. And there's something called a rent swap, where basically, your corporation can pay that individual $21,000. Now, it isn't going to fit everybody, but so, like, for instance, I'll send that individual 21K, and then they turn around and send that back from their corporation. So it goes to their personal account. They then, are able to put that into a business account, which then pays for the time that they've been staying in my house. And so, there's so many different things that you can look at, which is, again, none of my other tax professionals prior to we're never like coming up with all these things. And again, you're not wanting someone who's breaking the envelope. You're looking for someone who completely studies, understands the tax law and how it can help us, and is willing to, in a sense, we call it push the envelope, but it's really just understanding what is possible and what isn't possible to do, and that they can defend. That's the other thing, is finding a firm that if you do get audited, because theoretically it's random, which I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, that when you do that, they will represent you, because you don't, if you ever get audited, you shouldn't be representing you. They should be talking to the IRS for you. You should never be talking to them. And that was, something I had experienced in a negative way. So that was really important. And so if you have a firm that is telling you, yes, we're going to represent you, you're not going to talk to the IRS, whatever, then they're not going to have you do anything that they can't defend and that they don't understand completely. And so that's an important piece to know.
James, that's such like a good point. My experience has been too that if you're with an accounting firm that really is ethical and intelligent, which can maximize, they'll actually offer you the option. Like maybe it's an addendum on your return for like an extra $500-700. It's like that just covers any sort of an audit on that return. They should be offering you those things because they should be so confident about that for you, it's almost like technically a waste for $700 because they did your return so well that they're willing to offer you that insurance, right? But you pay it and you feel really good. And anyway, I think it's really important that people are offering you these things if you're working with them, especially I'm thinking at a lot of you guys' income levels, you definitely want that.
Yeah. And that's again, it's your situation. Everybody's income level will be different, but at every level of especially 1099 income, there's all kinds of, it's even to have a basic tax person is going to catch things that you don't catch, right? But again, the tax-free wealth book will help you understand who it is you're looking for.
One other thing came to my mind real quick on 1099s, because for our business in California, last year I went through our first audit with the EDD, the Employment Development Department for the state, for our manufacturing. And business 15 years, never had an audit. It took me a whole month to go through 4 years of 1099. They wanted to look at all the independent contractors. And we ran it really well. So thankfully it was super good. And the guy actually thanked me when he got done, the auditor. He goes, wow, this was so clean. He goes, you're awesome. Thanks for being, and for giving me all your records so freely. It was like, it was so nice. We just got it done. But it did take about a month to get it all ready. But the key to 1099 independent contractors, the things, if you ever get an audit specifically on that, and they will really hammer you on this, is you really should have an invoice attached to every check you write, like where they've invoiced you. When I got an audit, they wanted invoices. I had about 70% of the invoices, and thankfully these were contractors I worked with regularly that do fab work. And so they were able to go back and based on, we had some other notes and make them for me, but they want the invoice that matches the check that you wrote. And they want then the 1099 filings at the end of the year, right, that show the value that you gave. So they're going to want you to support that end of year report to the IRS with like all the invoices for the checks you wrote. And the other thing is, and they will actually, I've discovered, reach out to the independent contractors. Like I had to supply their emails and phone numbers, and they will actually call them in an audit and say, do they direct your work? Meaning, are you really an independent contractor or are you an employee? And so that's what they're really looking for. It really, truly has to be, you're not telling them what to do. You give them like, hey, I need this. And then they show up and they do that for you. And so I'm obviously that depends on relationships, but that's something to keep in mind. In an audit, they will contact the independent contractors. So, and that's actually an interesting thing with doTERRA in general, and all the wellness advocates we work with, is we are all independent contractors to doTERRA, right? We all get a 1099. And so I might mentally in the beginning have taken that really to an extreme because I deal with that all the time, but it actually is super helpful if we understand independent contractors in a legal sense. I think it will help us in our businesses, or a lot of newer leaders understand the role of wellness advocates in our relationship with each other and how we work. So.
Awesome.
Good point.
Yeah. What other questions or ideas? We have a few minutes as we wrap. And no question is a stupid question. I felt like in the beginning, my tax brain was just not, I didn't understand, right? And so I think it's good to just stay curious, ask questions, and connect with the experts, right? Just like we might be experts in natural solutions, there are people that are experts in health, in taxes. And so just letting them be the expert and bringing your insights into it without turning everything over, right? With bringing your wisdom. I dropped in the amount that you can pay your children. I loved that, James, what you listed as the kids' job description. Our kids help a lot when we are meeting with people, they're bringing us the things we need. They're kind of like an assistant, grabbing the build guide. And even like some of our kids are watching other kids while we're going out to a meal, while we're traveling with people. So all of that can be included, and you can pay them up to $14,600 per year.
And the cool thing too about how that works is in fact, your tax professional will give you a diagram at the end every year to make sure that you're moving money in accounts and paying the right things and showing, the path of how everything works within your business. So, but, like when I pay my children, I'm paying them myself into their personal bank accounts, which I have access to, right? And then I can I can actually move that money out into other areas from there. I'm not actually giving my child $14,600. Now you could put it into a college fund or whatever, right from there. But yeah, my kids would love it if I gave them that. They kind of don't even know what's moving to them in with this methodology. Now I pay them I can pay them out of these funds for different things throughout the year. But usually what I do is anyway, so you could figure it out with your tax professional, but the one thing you have to think about is that money doesn't, you go, oh, 14K, I'm not giving that to my kid and does it disappear, right? No, it's not. You still have full control over that money once it hits their account. It just has to hit their account, and then you can kind of decide where that money ends up after it hits that account. So you hear some of these things and you go, yeah, I don't really want to, but
Yeah.
it stays within your purview on how those funds are utilized after, where once it hits the account, and then you can take it from there and utilize it in other fashions.
We use that to pay for our kids' private school, to pay for photography class, right? Like, well, I could even pay for photography class for them out of business if they're helping with photography. So that 14,600 we paid to decorate their rooms, to get all the bedding and redo things like that, get creative. Their Christmas
Yeah.
present could be on that list, right? Here's when James was talking about the rent swap, I thought maybe it'd be helpful to see. We go back to our annual calendar as we're preparing, and we just look at, okay, what events are we holding in our home, or what events are we going to? So we make sure those are handled. So whether you're rent swapping because you're using somebody else's location, or you're using your home or space for business events, you could even, we charge our business for these events that get held in our house, right? So all of these events, our business, Seedstone, is going to send, our personal is going to send Seedstone an invoice that says, here's all the events for the year. This is the market rate for it. And then we could get paid for that too. So just some other things as you're doing events to consider as well, whatever your situation is, a few things to apply. Love it. Great insights. James, how has it paid off for you? Just learning a few of these things, how do you feel now that you have been more financially responsible, right? Gone down this road a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, it's saved us, thousands, and I mean like tens of thousands of dollars as far as, what we would have paid, even probably with a regular kind of your average Joe Norm accountant, right? And I to put a value on it is, I get people occasionally who complain to me about what they have to pay to a tax professional, and I said, well, have you really sat down to look at how much money they've kept in your pocket, right? And the value that there is, it's far more than whatever you're paying to a tax professional. And then just understanding what kinds of things you can utilize as a tax strategy. And including investments, right? Now, the whole idea is like, for us, we were like, okay, we got to get out of debt and we're like making no money, we're drowning. So we do doTERRA, it gets us to where we're not drowning anymore. Then it gets us to out of debt. Then you have this surplus of income and you're like, okay, what do I do with that? How do I maximize that? And at the same time, how do I maximize it in a way that I'm creating more tax strategies and advantages? And you're just not going to get that most likely from your average Joe, accountant. And so like just looking at the future, and I'll probably never retire, like whatever that is, right? But like, just nest eggs and things down the road, any projects that come up that I want to be involved with, that's all, being funded often by tax strategies and utilizing the business to pay for things or so all the things we've talked about. Anybody I meet who is creating income, even a W-2 employee that doesn't have a tax professional helping them. I did my own taxes way back in the day, right? And when you're first starting out, right? Like I'm working at McDonald's or wherever, right? Or I just have your average kind of beginner type jobs, right? You can kind of do your own, what is it, a 1049? I can't even remember what the number is. But anyway, when you're doing your own, that's fine. It's pretty simple. But when you start to add, when your income goes up and complexities, you've got to have somebody advising you and helping you along the way. And trust me, it will save you, and you will, again, we want to fund the government. Fine, let's fund the government, right? But let's not overfund the government, right? And let's put more money into the community and into the economies. And that's what the tax code is for, actually, is to motivate you to think about where best to put your money, how best to spend your money, how best to save your money, and to be more efficient with the resources that you have.
I love it. It's so powerful. When we have all these options, we have the possibilities. I'm going to drop into the Diamond WhatsApp chat it's like my 10 favorite principles. When what you're saying, James, is like when we spend money on things that we don't value, it never satisfies. So as we decide what we value, as we invest our time, energy, and money into those things, we're going to reap incredible rewards. And thanks so much for bringing these things up to the top so we can explore. Explore all the possibilities, right? Yes.
For
Great
sure,
idea,
Nisha.
Nisha.
Yeah.
Giving your kids a long list of things they can invoice you for. Oh, great insights. We can do this. Thank you for all that you are. Have a beautiful end of year. We're super excited. We'll be dropping things in the Diamond WhatsApp chat as they announce them at BDPD, as they make that available. When we have the compensation plan announcement on Monday night of next week. And so watch for that. And
Yeah, well, the other good thing
right.
about that, Natalie, is that, they're just kind of rolling this out and still, conversational around it. And so they're starting with folks that are qualified to go to that event, right? Because it's kind of a staged thing. And then from there, we'll know how to best, notify and create discussion groups with folks who aren't at that event, because we continue to train and have conversations around, and even they're still taking feedback, right, on different insights and things that different people's big brains see here and there. And the whole idea, just remember, is for instance, the comp plan is don't be afraid of what's coming. Be excited about the fact that they are going to find the most potent and effective and efficient way to maximize your ability to earn income with what doTERRA has to offer, and to maximize how both you and the company profit from helping and changing other people's lives, and also to reward behavior that helps push all of that forward instead of anything that might be a weight on that moving forward.
Amen. It's so powerful. We're on the verge of it all. We will see you back here in January, and we'll drop this in the recording in the chat as well. Excited for a powerful wrap up of 2024 and a great beginning of 2025. Love you all.
See ya.
Yeah.